program and the baseline assessment are both published recently on our website, and you can consult them as well. Another training that we developed concerns the topic of safety of journalists, designed for law enforcement agencies. This program aims to provide police, prosecutors, and other authorities with a tool they need to apply in their daily work. The curriculum builds on the existing HELP course on the freedom of expression and safety of journalists. Finally, we have another training dealing with access to information in the context of freedom of expression. And this one concerns 3 groups: legal professionals, public officials, and journalists. The curriculum is grounded in Article 10 of the Convention of the European Convention of Human Rights and the Tromsø Convention. This is the first binding international treaty that I'm sure you know, granting a general right to access to official documents, empowers journalists and citizens to have access to public information without justifying their request, appeal access denial, and benefit from proactive transparency by public bodies. The added value now of our trainings, why those trainings are important for the different beneficiaries. The trainings are interactive, are adaptable to local context, and they are delivered on-site. They are combining lectures, case studies, group discussions, and practical exercises. Moreover, in order to ensure the sustainability of the initiative, we have included for each training a module on training of trainers. Looking now ahead, I'm pleased to share with you that we are preparing a new project titled Resist, Strengthening Societal Resilience to Disinformation in Europe. This will be a 4-year project to be implemented from 2026 to 2030 with funding from the Norway grants. The project focuses on the demand side of disinformation, seeking to explore why individuals finally believe and share false content. The purpose of the project is to propose policy responses in media literacy, education, youth, and culture, aiming to build comprehensive national strategies. It can be implemented to European Union member states, that is a precondition, that are in the list of beneficiaries of Norway grants. It's a list with 15 states. Many states, such as Greece, Bulgaria, Hungary, Slovenia, Slovakia, are in the list of beneficiaries. So if there is a specific request from a state, we can start the procedure of designing the project with those countries. The project will be launched officially in September in Malta, but it will be just an official launching during a high-level conference on building democratic resilience to disinformation. But it will start on this, in January. So it will be the phase of launching and then discussions for the design, and the project can start from January 2026. The topic of disinformation is at the center of attention of the Council of Europe discussions currently. We have many discussions regarding the adoption of a legal binding instrument on countering disinformation, a potential convention on disinformation, a legal binding instrument, as so far we had only guidelines or resolutions from the PACE. This would be for sure a groundbreaking step toward the definition of boundaries between freedom of expression and the need for truthful and democratic discourse. That's all from my side regarding the different activities that we are leading. I remain, of course, at your disposal if you want to discuss about the new project or any other aspect of our work. I have written also my email in case you want to contact me by written for any further collaboration regarding the organization of trainings or any other activities that we are working on. So thank you a lot for your attention.
Thank you so much, Evelina. As a professional child of the Council of Europe myself, I have always, and having been a big proponent of the Council of Europe's work and remaining one, I am amazed at the scope of instruments elaborated by the Council of Europe that intersect with so many aspects of our everyday lives and respond or seek to respond to so many diverging problems, human rights problems and beyond. And what is interesting is that in this age of disengagement from multilateralism, because this is what this is the kind of times we're living in, the Council of Europe is not giving up and is trying to tackle under difficult circumstances emerging risks, very big risks, including disinformation. So among the very many instruments that you mentioned, which are important to our work and to the work of our colleagues, the future work of disinformation is really crucial, and I think it's a direction we need to be investing more and more efforts in. There's a lot, I think, to discuss also in how we make the best use of those instruments and cooperation possibilities, because it's one thing to create an instrument and another thing to make it fly, to make it successful, to make it known, and to really have all actors interested in applying it. So we have a lot to discuss there, as we have a lot to discuss on how we publicize this, all this wealth of opportunities that exist for cooperation, how we make it known to national and international actors, how we enable the space for them to come on board and make use of all that wealth of output that exists. We will discuss of all that, but we need to bring in more pertinent actors to the discussion, and it would be a true omission not to include, of course, one of EIN's own strategic collaborators for some years now, one of the first strategic collaborations that we created with the European Network of National Human Rights Institutions. Our peer, if I can call it a peer network organization at the level of national human rights institutes, exists almost as long as EIN has existed. So you're a bit older than us, dear Paula, by a couple of years. But in that brief lifespan until now, you also broke amazing new ground into enabling cooperations among NHRIs and joining forces for you to contribute to the upholding of all the values we are trying to uphold from your perspective. We have been developing cooperations with ENRI on different levels, most strongly and actively on the level of training, because what we need, what the system needs, is a bigger involvement of NHRIs into the implementation process through the submission of Rule 9s. We all agree that it's a field where we can achieve much more. But you also do a lot of work in thematic work on different aspects of human rights violations, and one of them is free speech and media freedom. So we would be very interested in hearing from you ENRI's work on the matters that concern us in the context of this conference, so as to inform our audience of that type of work that also exists and how to enable cooperation at that level as well. I'm thus giving the floor to Paula Novek, who has been working in the European Network of National Human Rights Institutions since 2021. You coordinate ENRI's legal work, dear Paula, focusing on the rule of law as well as the implementation of the Strasbourg and the Luxembourg court's judgments. You facilitate ENRI's work on human rights and the environment. You're a holder of 2 master's degrees in law and sociology, and previously you have worked for the Polish National Human Rights Institution, Office of the Commissioner for Human Rights, UNICEF Poland, and United Nations Global Compact Network Poland. The floor is yours, Paula.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the introduction, Julieta. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to speak in this panel. I hope you hear me well. I also offer my sincere congratulations on the almost completion of this very important project. And I believe in the current increasingly challenging context for human rights and the rule of law, conducting such projects and ensuring their long-lasting impact is valuable and very needed. And this project is definitely also an example on how to empower civil society organizations to support the timely and effective implementation of the European Court judgments in the context of freedom of expression, but also beyond. I believe to maximize the impact of such efforts, collaboration is key, not only among NHRIs to safeguard freedom of expression, but also between NHRIs and other actors. And definitely national human rights institutions, NHRIs as we call them, and their European network, ENRI, which I represent, we share this commitment to defending human rights and freedoms, and including freedom of expression, and that is why it is also essential to join forces to achieve our own common goals with civil society organizations, human rights defenders, but also international organizations. And with the previous intervention from our colleague from the Council of Europe, we could hear how much efforts the Council of Europe undertakes to safeguard media freedom and freedom of expression. Maybe I would like to briefly just introduce our network. In addition to what Julieta kindly mentioned, the European Network of National Human Rights Institutions brings together currently 50 institutions from the Council of Europe region, and we provide a platform for solidarity, for collaboration, as well as a common voice for NHRIs at the European level to enhance the promotion and protection of human rights, rule of law, and democracy. We also support the establishment and functioning of national human rights institutions. They are state-mandated bodies, independent of government. They have either legislative or constitutional basis, and they are established to promote and protect human rights at the national level. They function and they are established with reference to United Nations Paris Principles, and they also act as a bridge builder between civil society and states. Therefore, NHRIs collaborate with a variety of civil society actors, and they bring an accurate overview of the human rights situation on the ground to the state authorities and reflect on that in their recommendation and engagement with government, with parliaments and other state bodies. Although NHRIs were not directly involved in this project, its focus on implementing the European Court of Human Rights judgments on freedom of expression aligns very closely with the NHRI's mandate, because their broad mandate encompasses all human rights. It means that NHRIs protect and promote also freedom of expression. And in this regard, of course, free and pluralistic media are essential. For these reasons, NHRI's priority is to safeguard media freedom and media pluralism, and they will also continue supporting the effective implementation of the Strasbourg Court judgments, including those addressing violations of freedom of speech. I would like to briefly mention how NHRIS and ENRI contribute to safeguarding media freedom. And NHRIS at the national level do so in various ways. They conduct monitoring, they issue recommendations to relevant authorities, they provide advice on draft laws, draft policies that concern media freedom. They also, if their mandate allows, they conduct strategic litigation. They use their additional mandates. For instance, some of our members, they have the mandate of a focal point on SLAPs under the EU recommendation concerning strategic lawsuits against public participation. NHRIs also follow up on the implementation of Strasbourg Court judgments that affect media freedom and concern the protection of journalists. To advance media freedom, NHRIs also join forces together and they engage with regional mechanisms. They do so through cooperation within our network, within ENRI. In recent years, ENRI contributed to different thematic initiatives at the European level where we could bring to the attention of the regional actors the perspective of NHRIs while also reflecting this in our recommendations to ensure that the responses by regional actors introduce robust protection mechanism for media actors and journalists. For instance, we contributed to the EU initiatives such as Anti-SLAPP Directive, Anti-SLAPP Recommendation, as well as European Media Freedom Act. At the Council of Europe level, we engaged in the consultations on the Council of Europe Anti-SLAPP Recommendation. Furthermore, and this is something I'm really proud of because I have the pleasure to draft and coordinate ENRI's annual rule of law reports. These reports focus on the rule of law situation in the European Union as well as in wider Europe. We are just about to publish our 6th regional rule of law report that will be available on our website within, I believe, maximum 2 weeks. And each year through our report, NHRIs provide country-specific information on the rule of law situation in their country. This year, they focused also on the current challenges affecting media freedom. These insights allowed us to assess what are the common trends that we see across Europe, which are common for many countries, and they were also the basis of our recommendation in this area. For instance, the most reported challenge by NHRIs across Europe was attacks, threats, or harassment against journalists and media outlets. In several countries, NHRIs pointed out that actually it's women journalists that are particularly targeted. Our members also reported on SLAPs against journalists and media actors, as well as on attacks on journalists specifically during public assemblies. In several countries, the NHRIs raised concerns over the use of surveillance against journalists, as well as a lack of sufficient protection in that area. Another widely reported challenge in the area of media freedom is the spread of misinformation and disinformation. So, of course, I also echo the findings and the conclusions of the representative Council of Europe in this regard, and I'm happy to hear Council of Europe undertakes further activities to counter this phenomena. Lastly, in several European countries, NHRIs also pointed out challenges to the independence and effectiveness of media regulatory bodies. These growing challenges in the media sector are, of course, also closely intertwined with the alarming decline in enabling space for civil society and human rights defenders. And this is the trends that we as ENRI and NHRIs each year observe. This year, NHRIs, through our rule of law reporting, reported on many cases of threats and attacks, both online and offline, on civil society organizations and human rights defenders. They identified growing attitudes of negative attitudes, even orchestrated campaigns or stigmatization of civil society organizations and human rights defenders' actions, sometimes even leading to the criminalization of some work of human rights defenders. And when you see all these developments all together, you can see how significantly pressured is freedom of expression, because the critical voices are becoming more and more impacted and silenced. In this challenging context, it is crucial to maintain support from various actors, such as NHRIs, civil society organizations, for the implementation of the European Court of Human Rights judgments. All of them, but also, of course, with a focus on freedom of expression too. And in this area, overall, NHRIs are already committed to advancing the implementation of Strasbourg judgments. ENRI is committed to, as Julieta mentioned, we organize trainings for staff of NHRIs to increase their knowledge of the possible avenues of engagement to support both at the national level and the European level the implementation of Strasbourg judgments. NHRIs also refer to such judgments in their reports, in their recommendations to state authorities. They conduct awareness-raising activities to the wider public. They focus on educational activities. They raise awareness and engage with courts. They engage with the government. They cooperate with national coordinators established within the government to support the execution of European Court of Human Rights judgments, and they advise them on the appropriate ways on how to implement such judgments timely and effectively. And lastly, of course, NHRIs, similarly as civil society organizations, submit their Rule 9 submissions to the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe to present the objective information on the state of play regarding the implementation of judgments by relevant authorities. Finally, NHRIs also jointly report on the trends and the progress or a lack of regarding the implementation of Strasbourg Court judgments in ENRI's annual rule of law reporting. Yet we see more needs to be done to advance the implementation. State authorities not only need to dedicate their efforts to tackling legal, structural, or political obstacles delaying effective implementation, there is also a need to reaffirm their commitment to the Convention and their respect for the role of the court. It is difficult in the current context, especially in light of the recent open letter signed by 9 governments of the Council of Europe states that called for a new conversation around the Convention and about the role of the court. And in our rule of law reporting, we also saw cases of intentional non-implementation of certain Strasbourg Court judgments by national authorities. It's becoming more and more clear that there is a need for further pressure from civil society, from wider public, and from independent institutions such as NHRIs to safeguard or even restore the respect for the Convention standards and to counter the increasing trend of challenging the legitimacy of the court and its judgments. What could be, I was also thinking about what could be possible ways forward to sustain and to increase implementation efforts. And from the point of view of the network of NHRIs, I wish to stress the added value of collaboration and engagement of civil society organizations with NHRIs. Collaboration with civil society organizations lies in the mandate of NHRIs. They are obliged to do that under UN PARS principles. And as I also mentioned before, NHRIs act as a bridge between civil society and states. They bring the perspective and the findings coming from civil society organizations. They present them and refer to them in their engagement, in the NHR's engagement with the government, and they reflect on them in their recommendation. And for NHRI, civil society organizations remain an important partner, an important source of information on the human rights situation on the ground. In the context of the implementation of judgments, civil society organizations may bring to the attention of the respective NHRIs relevant judgments that are pending implementation. Civil society organizations could also recommend the NHRI to consider submitting Rule 9 submissions to the Committee of Ministers, or even proposing a joint Rule 9 submissions that could be developed together with civil society organizations. And there are several examples of such collaboration among in our network. Civil society organizations could also alert NHRIs on the ongoing violations of freedom of expression, freedom of media, so that the NHRI, in line with their mandate, could investigate on cases or take any other possible appropriate measures to address them with relevant state authorities. NHRIs could also refer to such violations to indicate that these violations occurred in their contribution and engagement with regional mechanism. And here the European Commission annual rule of law reporting could be a good example, as well as, of course, for example, Rule 9 submissions to the Committee of Ministers to illustrate the state of play regarding the implementation. In this context, further engagement of civil society organizations with regional mechanisms could be also beneficial. This could help create further pressure on states to advance the implementation of judgments and protection of human rights. This concerns not only possible contribution to the Council of Europe mechanism, where, of course, one example could be Rule 9 submission, which I mentioned before, but here, the engagement with other regional mechanisms, such as the European Commission annual rule of law reporting, could be beneficial too. As you know, of course, the European Commission report also focuses on media freedom, and they issue relevant country-specific recommendation. And through the consultations and contribution to this process, we may have some impact and influence over the shape and the content of these recommendations, and to point to the attention of the European Commission what are the current challenges that need to be addressed by state authorities. And here the pressure coming from European Commission could be useful to push for advancing these values. So I'll stop here, but thank you so much, and I look forward to, of course, further question.
Thank you so much, Paula, for your presentation and for the amazing work ENRI is doing around our matters of common concern. NHRIs at national level and now at regional level, thanks to the coordination platform you provide, develop such a wealth of activities around those matters. Out of the very many activities you mentioned, I will highlight a couple. The first one is the thematic approach. So it is important not only in respect of free speech and freedom of the media related questions, but in generally having this thematic approach is the only solution forward for us as well. Our own project went for the first time into the direction of developing a thematic approach, and we could only see the benefits of this approach. Then the contribution to the internationalization of regional concerns. So the fact that there are many actors at national level, there were many actors at national level contributing to the rule of law report of the Commission was a fact, but the possibility created, and I think both of our networks have been have broken new ground towards this direction of convincing the European Commission to include our data and our input into their understanding of the rule of law situation is very important. Of course, a very important element lies with your the nature of NHRI's mandate. NHRIs stand in the middle, somewhere in the middle between the state authorities, the state machinery, and civil society. They are independent. You are independent bodies, institutions, but independent is the key word here. So it is important that you have the status that is necessary to be included in all relevant discussions at state level when the drafting of new laws are discussed, for example, but at the same time, your role of being a champion for civil society as well is equally prevalent in the NHRI's mandate. And this is very important because you mentioned the advice you provide in the drafting stage of laws and draft policies. NHRIs are an institution that cannot be dropped, cannot be excluded from this, from those discussions at national level, depending on the level of the will, the political will at given national jurisdictions to include or not civil society. Civil society, unfortunately, can be excluded and is often excluded, but it's more difficult to exclude NHRIs. And in this sense, it is important that we have vocal and independent NHRIs filling that gap and developing this space for the further inclusion of NGOs. Of course, the relations with civil society being included in your mandate is very important. From departing from that point of view, I wish to move on to the next presentation and include into the discussions a representative of the National Human Rights Institute here in Greece. So we started from the Council of Europe level, then so the institutional level, then we moved on to the NHRI's level, at regional level. It would be an omission not to include into the discussion the perspective of an NHRI, and a very dear one to my heart, because a lot of my good friends and colleagues from the student years already are manning this institution, which is doing a very important work here at national level. We have with us Christos Tsevas, Human Rights Officer, legal advisor for the Greek National Commission for Human Rights. Christo, the National Commission is developing a wealth of activities on the very many matters of your broad mandate, but among them freedom of expression and freedom of the media is one thematic area that you are monitoring. You also cooperate, you're part of ENRI. We would be very interested in hearing from you the activities that you develop, how you cooperate with civil society in general, but in particular in terms of the matters that constitute the subject matter of our conference. Giving the floor to Dr. Christos Tsevas, a Human Rights Officer, Legal Advisor at the National Commission for Human Rights. You're an adjunct lecturer in International Human Rights Law and International Refugees Law at the Democritus University of Thrace, at the Law Faculty from 2021 to today, and a lecturer at the Greek National School of Public Administration and Local Government. Formerly, you have held a wealth of positions as an analyst at the International Organization for Migration, UN Migration, UNHCR Associate Asylum Expert, and as a legal officer at the Greek Asylum Appeals Committee. You have held a multitude of other roles, and you have a wealth of academic titles as well that are available to the participants to our conference. And without further ado, I give you the floor, dear Christos, for you to present the relevant activities of the Greek National Commission for Human Rights.
Dear Julieta, dear all, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation. Representing the Greek National Commission for Human Rights, I must say that we wish we were there, but there were several obligations that did not help with that. But thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel and discuss with colleagues, as you said, in different levels, these strategies for long-term impact and synergies, and the role of NHRIs, and finally the national level, the Greek National Commission for Human Rights. We follow the work of the European Implementation Network, the progress of this specific project, and it's essential to underline the value of such projects, the work of the network, and building on what my colleagues also said, and especially Paula mentioned, and I must say that also the work of ENRI as a network of NHRIs is very important and valuable in our work as well. And let me begin with my presentation and comments on the issue, the work of the Greek National Commission for Human Rights. I don't know if I can upload the presentation or just if it's easier. Okay. No, there is a sign that I cannot, but it's not. I can. Now it's perfect. Yes, thank you. I suppose you can see. Yes. Okay. Yes. Building on what was said already, I think that the purpose of the discussion on the panel is very useful to mention on reflecting, for example, on the progress of a project in general, because also the Greek National Commission for Human Rights is part of research projects, and we understand how this can have an impact also in everyday life or in the work of a national human rights institution as well. The exploration of strategic synergies across sectors, and the identification of concrete tools for doing that, for conducting advocacy, and finally emphasizing the national human rights institutions' unique position and responsibilities, because that's our part of this discussion. And as Paula said, the role of national human rights institution in general, and of course of the Greek National Commission for Human Rights, is really important, based on the independence, on the mandate of those institutions on promoting, protecting human rights as a bridge between the state and the civil society, on monitoring compliance with international standards, on advocating for structural reforms, including the judgments of the European Court dictate, and finding trusted partners with legal professionals, NGOs, research centers. And that's how we build on synergies. That's how we we transform the impact of our work into cooperation, into synergies, based on our experience as well. Just to say a few words for the Greek National Commission for Human Rights, it was established in 1998 as an independent advisory body to the Greek state and as the national human rights institution in Greece. The founding legislation was amended by a law in 2021. And under these provisions, the National Commission has acquired legal personality, functional, administrative, and financial independence, and it was accredited as an A status NHRI with full compliance with the UN Paris principles. And the last re-accreditation took place in November 2024. A very important aspect on what we are discussing is also the composition of the Greek National Commission for Human Rights, and that's, let's say, our main our added value, starting from the composition, from our legal framework, because the composition includes different, let's say, actors, like NGOs from different thematic sectors. As you have said, that the thematic approach is important. Environmental organizations, organizations working on refugees and migrants, on LGBTQI+ rights. The oldest NGOs in Greece, for example, universities and experts, research centers, independent authorities, and as liaison officers, not exactly in the composition of the Greek National Commission, but we are discussing with them during the plenary sessions. It's the political parties, government services, the ministries, so there are liaison officers from that point of view, and we think that this composition also is important for discussing on, for example, freedom of expression specifically, or having a thematic approach and building on synergies and with common goals, let's say, or making monitoring flexible, easier, and effective, finally. The added value of the Greek National Commission, especially discussing on the recent, let's say, on our recent work, can be divided in 5 sectors, let's say, on the awareness part, on freedom of expression standards, and especially on the judgments, with recent reports before international bodies, the submission to the CCPR, of course, the participation in the Parliament's Committee on the Monitoring of the Court's judgment last year, meetings with the Department of Execution of Judgments of the Council of Europe, on our work on the multi-stakeholder engagement with civil society organizations, journalists, other legal actors. Our pluralistic composition is one of those, let's say, we're building on that pluralistic composition, and it's really important in our work as well. Also our networks, which are really good practices across Europe, the Racist Violence Recording Network, based on also on the protection of human rights defenders against racist violence, and the recording mechanism of informal forced returns, networks of several actors, NGOs, research centers, and other actors. Both of those networks and mechanisms. The hearing of actors and bodies, that's one of our great tools in order to gather around the table and discuss on several matters, and bring together ministries, liaison officers, parliament, actors in the private sector also, civil society organizations, This has been also our work recently on business and human rights, for example, or we should think about also the digital transformation, AI, or other thematic approaches also connected with freedom of expression. Capacity building and training initiatives, the research projects, through the research projects, apart from our mandate as well, through the research projects, we had the chance to conduct capacity building on hate speech, anti-Semitic speech, with several work with colleagues from different and actors from different parts of the society and the state. So through our research projects, we act as a bridge as well, with research outcomes as this exact project of this conference. The organization of educational activities, our annual seminars, or the cooperation with universities and civil society, with ministries on such activities, capacity building or training initiatives. Then, as Paula said, the rule of law reports and the perspective of each one of the national human rights institution and our perspective is really important, because for example, in the last rule of law report, the Greek National Commission reported issues of against human rights defenders, the civil society space, freedom of expression issues, and the SLAPS cases of 2024. We recommend on different human rights violations and issues that arise, with comments and submissions on draft laws and regulations. We aim at strengthening legal frameworks, laws, regulations, etc. And finally, the visibility for speech-related human rights violations, with different reports, recent reports, and reference reports, statements, like the statement of last year on the situation of human rights defenders related to migration and asylum. Those are just indicative activities during the last mainly 2 years, but we have many more are in progress. Some key challenges for us as well, but and I think broader, seeing from a broader perspective, is the shrinking of civic space that I suppose you have discussed it already, and rising restrictions. Recently, I participated representing the Greek National Commission in the National Human Rights Academy, organized by Henry and Odir, on the protection of human rights defenders, and the outcomes and the exchange of practices, good practices, was the best, let's say, lesson for all of us. A key challenge is the resistance to the court's rulings and efforts for the execution. For example, in Vasilakis and Katrami group of cases, but this you have already discussed, so I'm not saying anything more. Fragmentation of advocacy efforts. So these synergies are important. The importance of such projects as the specific one for the risk of backsliding after the closure. So we need to think of ways to go further based on the needs. And the strategic role of national human rights institutions, and especially the Greek National Commission for Human Rights, can be based on the monitoring and reporting, on the ongoing assessment of state compliance with the court judgments, as a convening power, bringing together diverse stakeholders for dialogue, with capacity building, as I said before, for judges, lawyers, journalists, and civil society organizations, with advocacy, with engagement with international bodies, which is already under our mandate, for example. And it is important to strengthen those synergies and the tools for engagement with different actors, civil society organizations. The ground level data are very important, and that's the lesson learned from our networks. They are VRN and the mechanism for informal returns. Academia and national human rights institutions, we have already made many cooperation with universities, and the research-based advocacy is really important. With journalists and media, on media freedom, on passing the human rights messaging. With legal actors and national human rights institutions, there's strategic litigation support through our recent third-party interventions before the European Court and the Supreme Administrative Court. We saw that there is a lesson learned that national human rights institutions can make the change in such, let's say, platforms, courts, etc. The cooperation with international organizations, the submission of reports, the cooperation with monitoring bodies, and other networks like ENRI, GANRI, ODIHR, FRA, with the research and network collaboration. There are many activities there. And for us as well, I mean, we have already been active in those different networks. And the way forward, I think we should channel the project outcomes and from, for example, this project or other projects, similar projects, within the mandate of National Human Rights Institution. It's not a project that finished, closed, and then we do nothing. I think we should engage in National Human Rights Institution and bring the outcomes of the project within the mandate, secure funding for human rights programming, develop regional coalitions on freedom of expression based on the cases, as you have already discussed yesterday, as there are cases indicating similar gaps in the national legal orders, in the different legal orders. Invest in digital rights and media literacy initiatives. I mean, new technologies and digital rights is the next step, I think, closely related to freedom of expression. Strengthen legal aid frameworks for journalists and human rights defenders. The context of SLAPs already, it's an important next step also for the national legal orders. We should monitor that, especially with respective directive. And some conclusions, as we understand from the two last interventions, mine and Paula's, we think that national human rights institutions are key to turning also temporary project outcomes into lasting structural change. It's like an institutional memory of human rights protection in the national level. And the sustained partnerships, cross-border learning. This is not something usual, or it's not something given. I mean, what ENRI does is really important for all the institutions, for example, this cross-border learning. And the Greek National Commission for Human Rights participate as a partner, as I said, in research projects. And we have this understanding that the outcomes of a project create a momentum to continue with the next phase aspect of protection of freedom of expression and relevant human rights violations of other rights. For example, if we make a reference to the specific project, but in general, I think the outcomes of a project can show something for the future and can bring a momentum to continue with the next steps. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm at your disposal for questions.
Thank you indeed very much, Christo. You outlined succinctly the very many activities of the Greek National Human Rights Committee Commission. I'm sorry. Out of the very many activities that you engage in, I will mention those that are the most crucial for us. Of course, the participation to the debates on draft legislation, I already mentioned that in the context of Paula's intervention. You mentioned the data gathering for the purpose of research-based advocacy. I cannot stress enough how important this is for the work of us all, not only for the work of the international institutions that rely on this data gathering from national NHRIs, because your work in this relevant field comes with a presumption of accuracy and credibility. But we also, from civil society, we use this as an indicator and you know, it can, your data, so to say, can complete our research in fields where we don't have access, and we can also measure our data against those provided by NHRIs to see, for reasons of comparability, to check the accuracy also of our own data collection. I also want to mention the creation of coalitions. You pioneer, I would say, in being part of such coalitions at regional level and at international level. You mentioned the capacity building and educational activities, and there I have you mentioned some of the key actors you are training, and there I have a follow-up question after I give the floor to the room. And you mentioned also the need to respond to the resistance to the court's rulings, which is of primary importance to us. And there I have a small question for both of you as well. Thanking you all for your interventions. I now am turning to the floor for questions to the panelists, and then I have a couple of my own. But first, yes, Georgiana.
Sorry? My name is Georgiana Gheorghe, and I represent the Romanian Helsinki Committee. I have a question for the Council of Europe. And I really hope, I'm already fearing it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but we were talking yesterday about synergies. And I know that each institution has a mandate and there are only so many activities they can do, but I start from the practical reality that we are pretty desperate in Romania right this moment, because the Ministry of Justice refuses to integrate in the transposition anti-SLAPP draft law the much more generous standards of the Council of Europe anti-SLAPP recommendation. And we started this discussion in October last year, and I even had to go to Brussels and chase somebody responsible for the directive and ask them to please send the Ministry of Justice a written document saying that the European Commission is not against the national state regulating beyond the minimum standards, because the Ministry of Justice was evoking these reasons that they can't go beyond the minimum standards because the European Commission wouldn't allow it, which is of course ridiculous for us, but we just needed like an official document from the European Commission. And I mean, I'm just wondering what other avenues we have except making the best arguments we can that the Council of Europe has better standards. And these standards better fit the realities on the ground. For example, the directive only refers to civil cases. You know, the recommendation talks about criminal anti-SLAPP cases, so on and so forth. Is there anything that we can do, or is there anything that the Council of Europe can do in terms of activities. I'm not sure if you have ever been part of a transposition process, probably not, but what can we do at this very moment when we are transposing the directive? We really want to get everyone on board, all the allies that we can. The battle at the Ministry of Justice is pretty much lost. The only small victory we had was to integrate national cases in the draft law, because it only refers to transnational cases. That's still big, but still, then we have the parliament. We will go in the parliament and try to make the same arguments. We are not very optimistic. I was just wondering whether the Council of Europe, having in mind this recommendation that can do something to how, is there something that we have to ask and we don't know how to ask? Is there something that we can do together? And I am asking on behalf of all Romanian civil society and groups affected by this, can we make this a recommendation a reality, and are there any avenues? So I know it's not an easy question, but thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a quick question for you, Evangelia, regarding, you mentioned something about new recommendations regarding freedom of expression, and I was wondering whether you are thinking or working on something regarding the pay and journalist compensation. There's a case pending before the European Court of Justice regarding the remuneration for online use of press publications, and if this is something that you're maybe are willing or will be addressing. Thank you.
Thank you. I also have a question to Evangelia. You mentioned the resilience project with the Norway grants, and you said it could be applied in different countries. If requested, who should request? That's my question.
Thank you for these questions. I add a couple of my own before I give the floor back to the speakers. So I have a brief question for all three of you. So a bit linking with Radoslav's question, although not mirroring it, you mentioned the very great many cooperation activities that you develop. You can also advise different actors at legislative level. You describe the very many training activities. So I wanted to say how successful you deem those efforts to be in terms of participation, in terms of these activities being known to the actors that can benefit from these services. You cannot have, of course, the exact numbers, and I'm not asking for you to give us that, but I'm rather alluding to challenges you might have to make your cooperation activities more known, and how we can perhaps help improve that situation, or how can we create further bridges between our civil society interlocutors or even our national counterparts outside the civil society level to help, because the success of your work also means the success of our work. So our success passes through the success of such cooperation activities, and we're here to maximize synergies. Then I would have a question for our colleagues online, and perhaps you can both make an attempt at a reply. So we know we have been discussing how it is important for us, for very many reasons that we don't have time to repeat now, that NHRIs participate to the implementation process with the submission of Rule 9s. We have said times and again how we have been quite successful so far in increasing the numbers of Rule 9 submissions made by NGOs. The numbers have almost quadrupled in the lifespan of EIN, but the submissions, the relevant submissions from NHRIs generally, regardless of the thematic, remain very low. They have not surpassed 20 per year. So I think the best results was 20 or 21 at a given year, which is still very low. And if I'm not mistaken, I can definitely be mistaken, but if there are any Rule 9 submissions made from NHRIs, I think only a very slim minority, if any at all, pertain to cases regarding free speech. So what are the impediments for greater NHRI participation to this effort through the submission of Rule 9s? What impedes such the improvement of the situation, and how can we keep working towards improving the situation? And perhaps a link of this question with a further one to Christos, if I want to play the devil's advocate, dear Christos. You mentioned the resistance to the court's rulings regarding also the Greek context of the Vasilakis and the Katrami case, but I do need to note that these cases, although they have been pending for more than 15 years at national level, unfortunately there has been no engagement of civil society lato sensu. So we have not had so far a submission on those cases coming either from an NGO or from the NHRI. And I know all about the prioritization of your thematic work and limited capacities and all that, but I would like to explore what can be done to help improve the potential of greater involvement with those cases, including, and that's the second limb of my question to both of you, the potential of achieving joint submissions at some point, because this is something we're advocating for as well. Joint Rule 9 submissions on different thematics, potentially on Rule 9, or on Rule 9 submissions on Article 10 cases, jointly by NHRIs and NGOs. We have achieved a couple of such joint submissions throughout the lifespan of the implementation mechanism. Such coordination efforts can only increase the weight and impact of a Rule 9 before the Committee of Ministers. So what needs to be done to move towards such a result? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your questions. I will start from the simplest ones, and then I will proceed with the more complex ones. Regarding the question of Radi about the new project, you can contact the division. I mean, first of all, we are an intergovernmental organization, so we are working with state authorities. That means that we need to have a specific request. We are sharing what we're doing, and we need to have their agreement in order to be involved to a project. So we need to have the political will, and if there is, we can, of course, discuss about the different components of the project. So the answer is that a relevant authority can come to us and we can discuss how we will design the project. It's something that we will do together. We're not imposing a project. We don't have something fixed and we are just proposing it. The project design is not a monitoring mechanism, of course. It's a project, so we need to have, so I will combine also the question of Julieta. So, of course, we need to assess the success of the project and the success of every activities that we are having. That means that we are having every year reports where we are describing the victories and sometimes the challenges that we are facing for every activity that we are having in the context of every project that is, of course, mentioned in the different reports that we are preparing every year. And at the final report at the end of the project with the results that produced. And regarding the activities that are implemented outside of the project, because we don't have only project, we are having also other activities for which we are not obliged to have any agreement with official authorities, national authorities. We can have them with civil society, with journalists. So for that, of course, we are assessing our progress, we are having numbers, we are respecting the gender equality also. We are trying every time to involve the same number of women speakers and men, of course. And in order to promote our work and what we're doing, because of course when we have a custom to have specific states, project with specific states every year, they know what we are doing. But in order to share our knowledge, what we're doing recently, and it's a great opportunity for us to encounter other beneficiaries that could be interested to join us, is that we are participating to international forums and European forums. Recently, we participated and we organized a forum session on disinformation in the context of the Eurodig that took place in Strasbourg in May. And yesterday was also the IGF, the Internet Forum of Governance. And we are participated as well for a session dealing with AI and disinformation and how AI can be also a tool for countering disinformation, but also a tool that can be used to spread disinformation. So we are using these ways as well to publish our work. Then regarding the question of Susanna, regarding the new instrument about the, from what I understand, the question is about the working condition of journalists or the specific remuneration or problems that they're encountering in everyday life. For this specific topic, for the moment, we don't have any instrument that is under preparation. There is the general recommendation of 2016 about the protection and the safety of journalists. But for your information, we have recently produced a very interesting paper in the context of the project that we had in Albania. But it was in the context of course, project and agreement following a request of the relevant authorities to discuss about the different standards that we're having in order to improve the working conditions of journalists in the Council of Europe member states with concrete recommendations for the Albanian state. And now the most complex question about how we can help, we can assist states with the transposition of the EU law. Well, we have been already in this logic. We have worked, but that could be in the context again of a project, because it's something that goes into detail about giving legal advices, and we cannot give legal advice without any specific context. And of course, we're not activists. We cannot provide, even though it can be the better advice that we can give, we cannot deliver it without any request from the Ministry of Justice, for instance. So what we can do is that in case we had a project in Romania, for instance, is that in the hypothesis we can of course provide the legal advice explaining how this directive could be better applied in the national context. For the moment, what we can do is only provide training to the eventually the judicial academies in order to train the judges to assess better the national case law and apply the European standards. That can be done, of course, also with the agreement of the relevant judicial academies.
Excuse my ignorance if this is very common knowledge, and I know that the recommendation is quite new, it's 2024, but do you keep a track record of those European countries who have integrated? I mean, the directive is also new, the transposition is ongoing, but as it relates to recommendation, do you have like good practice examples? Do you keep a track record of who integrated the recommendations? And what, because this might also, I'm just trying to to see what other arguments we can use. So, for example, for this recommendation, would you keep a track record of those Council of Europe countries who do integrate the better standards of the recommendation in their transposition law, so that we can also say, look at these countries. Probably Belgium is one example, but I'm just asking if you have a record out there somewhere.
Yes, we keep on track. Well, there is no official, this recommendation has been adopted recently, and it was, of course, produced by an expert committee, and as all the standard setting documents are managed by the CDMSI. What we are doing is that we are helping with the implementation, and we are keeping a track in the context of the project that we are having. So recently we have a baseline assessment analysis, make a comparison between the national practices and law of different states that are part of our regional project, of horizontal facility project. So we had compared different practices from Serbia, Bosnia, North Macedonia, Montenegro, and Albania. And yes, the idea is to share good practices and give good examples to other states to follow. In terms of a more general follow-up, there is no such one apart from this that we are doing in the context of project. But from what I know is that in 5 years, the implementation will be evaluated by the Committee of Ministers, but we are not yet at this stage. No, of our recommendation. Of the directive, we are not the organism that is dealing with that. Yes, for the recommendation of the Council of Europe. Of course, the directive can be also analyzed in the context of our legal advice that we are giving, and in comparison with our recommendation. So yes, is included, but we cannot follow up on the transposition of the legally with a specific procedure.
Before giving the floor to the colleagues online, I think Frederick has a related question to the discussion that is ongoing, so you can add your comment.
Because this has been a very frequent problem at the execution. The Secretary General Jagland in 2015 asked that there be much closer cooperation between execution and cooperation programs to ensure that all cooperation programs which were linked with execution were also noted in the execution context, and that we had necessary contacts. But this is an old lesson. It started with Turkey and police and so forth, but it's a hugely interesting interaction, because when the programs come as part of the execution can intervene in the programs, and the programs can give ideas to execution. But among the things we can do then in the execution is to write to ministers, to the Prime Minister or to the Minister of Justice, or whoever is responsible, Chairman of the Parliament, or whoever is responsible, and ask for measures. Notably, I've ensured myself that we have intervened in a number of Romanian situations at high level in order to ensure that the execution requirements are respected, notably in the context of legislation which is to pass. Now, if these SLAP regulation recommendations, and to some extent it doesn't matter if they're EU or Council of Europe, because they are both based on the same standards, are not integrated. That is an execution problem. And it could, if adequately exploited, lead to Secretary General, the Director of Human Rights, or the head of the Department of Execution, depending a little bit on how high and circumstances you want to go, intervening and asking for the inclusion of necessary measures into the legislative proposals or into the legislations adopted, and of course to very negative reactions in the committee ministers if that does not happen. That could result in the committee ministers writing directly to the government saying that you're not okay any longer. But I just wanted to add this bridge which exists between cooperation programs and the execution, and which can, or has been at least in the past when I've been involved, been very, very successfully exploited in many situations. Thanks.
Do you have to add something? Do you need to? Okay, great. Colleagues online, dear Paula, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Julieta, for your question. And yes, I mean, I am also aware, of course, that the number of Rule 9 submissions submitted by civil society organizations are much higher than those submitted by NHRIs, but I think there was also this positive trend that the number of NHRI submissions are rising. And I think that was one of the reasons was the positive really impact of the training that we jointly conducted in Strasbourg for NHRIs, for legal professionals 2 years ago, which was a very welcome positive follow-up, how NHRIs used the knowledge that they gained through the training in practice, and that resulted in a higher number of Rule 9 submissions than it was before, and also some new members, new institutions really did that for the first time. An example could be earlier this year, the Swiss Human Rights Institution, which was established only a year ago, submitted a Rule 9 submission in the famous Klimasynerien case, which was also with some support from ENRI and colleagues from our working group on climate crisis and other NHRIs in it. So. But indeed, I mean, there are, of course, obstacles to ensuring that this number could be higher. And as you also mentioned, one of them is for sure limited resources. NHRIs need to prioritize the topics and activities they undertake, also in line with their strategic plans or the ongoing developments at the national level. But I think when focusing on what could be done is that I believe what's useful, and maybe Christos would say a bit more about that, but is that, as I mentioned in my intervention too, civil society organizations are an important source of information for NHRI. So if civil society organizations see that there is a particular judgment that requires further actions by independent actors such as NHRIs, they could reach out and engage with the NHRI on this and convince the NHRI that it would benefit from the Rule 9 of the NHRI, and indeed also maybe encouraging or proposing even a joint submission, which you mentioned is a very, very good practice too. I believe maybe just to mention that aspect too is that maybe we could also think of other ways of ensuring further engagement of civil society organizations and NHRIs within the Council of Europe mechanism, because Rule 9 submission is one of them, and it's also very, it's quite formal, and maybe there could be space or avenue of explore how in a different ways or different avenues could be used to further ensure this engagement between the Council of Europe, NHRIs and civil society to advance the implementation. And of course, I mean, quite obviously what I would recommend, but for state authorities to ensure more resources for NHRIs, also to have more capacity building opportunities. I do believe that further trainings and exchanges on good practices in this topic would be also useful.
Thank you very much, Paula. Christo, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I agree with the obstacles. You both referred to them. I mean, the limited resources, and related to that, it's a whole new area with limited resources. And but this forum, for example, is valuable to have such a discussion, a first discussion, and have, as you said, coordination efforts, or I agree with trainings, exchanges. I mean, within ENRI, this is really important, or other networks. And I think that the Greek National Commission has referred to the execution of judgments in general as is a usual recommendation in several reports to the UN, to the Council of Europe, in the rule of law reports. We constantly engage with Parliament, with the Department of Execution, with our members which are NGOs in the context, for example, in migration, asylum, if we consider, for example, the Greek context about cases, the MSS or SAFI, so the composition is really important to have this first step, as I said before, and we try to engage authorities with official meetings, with the board. And I think a key to go further is the plenary and how they decide the next steps, the strategic plan, as Paula said, in general. I mean, how in general NHRIs see those, initiatives and the prioritization, of course. But I think for the Greek context, I can say that at least that the third-party intervention that I mentioned before the European Court of Human Rights and the Supreme Administrative Court, were a first step on that direction. So let's see how it goes, and I really appreciate that this forum has also this kind of energy, and our discussion was really important for us as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Christopola. You have raised your hand. Yes, please.
Thanks. Just very, very briefly, what I wanted also to say, and also in relation to what Christos mentioned, is that I also believe that Rule 9 submission is a very specific way of supporting the implementation of judgments, and we cannot forget that NHRIs really support this whole process in various ways. And I believe sometimes maybe they also find that Rule 9 is not necessarily the most effective one, given the very specific context of the national situation or the engagement with the government, because we know from this year's reporting that 17 national human rights institutions from the Council of Europe region, they engage with the national coordinator on the execution of judgment. So they also advise the government on how the judgments should be implemented. And indeed, I could also think that Rule 9 submission could be seen as a most strategic tool to be used by NHRIs when such engagement with national authorities at the national level is not sufficient. So maybe just wanted to reflect on that this is a very, very specific tool, and I think the reasons behind why some NHRIs maybe do not decide to work on this can also be of various reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula, also for the bravery to come forward with this remark, which it is indeed a very real concern. So it can be considered as one of the tools, indeed as one of the most effective tools, but it can also be seen as a level of escalation of the response from the NHRI's side perspective when we're talking implementation and levels of implementation. So it is very important, and I'm very glad that our forum creates the space for such frank exchanges, also for our civil society interlocutors to hear the perspective, the frank perspective of NHRIs. And this goes exactly, links with what I meant when I asked the question, and when I mentioned also financial resources and limitations to financial resources as a part of the problem. The truth is that the work done at thematic level is there already. So if there is the will to take the direction of a Rule 9 submission, to our understanding, it would not take very much additional work. It would not require very much additional resources. So this is why we need this frank exchange, and we need not to hide. Of course, financial constraints is a very real constraint. So it's not just an argument for the sake of the argument. But we do need to go beyond this argument and also discuss about why and under which circumstances this is not the best strategic solution. Because if there's the will to go towards that direction, we argue that it would not take that much extra manpower to create a Rule 9 submission, because the thematic work is already there. One just needs to put it into the right format for submission to the Committee of Ministers. But it is really very important to have had this discussion, and we need to wrap up now, not just this panel, but also our conference. So unless my colleagues online and Evelina have anything else to add, I will thank you very much for the really fruitful exchanges, open exchanges, frank exchanges, and thank you for trusting this platform as a secure one to really engage into meaningful discussions. We're just beginning what is definitely a very promising avenue of collaboration with our international institutions counterparts and with our NHRI counterparts. Thank you very much for your participation to this panel.
Thank you very much as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, dear colleagues, what an amazing day and a half, 1.5 days we have had, but also what an amazing 2 years we have had in the context of this project. It's emotional for all of us at EIN to concluding this conference, which basically concludes our major activities, at least in substance, of this project. If I want to very briefly, I will not take more than 5 to 7 minutes because we all need to go. I would like to say that for us, it was an amazing experience. It was a new avenue of tackling the implementation questions and challenges we're faced with. It was the first time we went so deeply into the thematic approach ourselves. It was a great deal of work undertaken. It was the first time we invited you to this type of work, thematic work, and it was the first time we sought funding in such a way. The funders also had to be convinced that this is important, and the fact that we were successful in this effort enabled these activities. And of course, we could not have done anything without your support and your involvement. At EIN, we're just facilitators, we're trainers, we provide the space for collaboration. Hopefully we provide also the venue for those meetings. We provide our legal expertise and advocacy expertise from the international level, but those who are undertaking the work, who are shouldering the work in substance are you. You have done an amazing work at your national jurisdictions under difficult circumstances, increasing challenges regarding the space in which you carry out your activities, risks to your work, funding challenges, and yet you made the most out of this effort. We will soon be in touch in substance also with 2 substantial documents, one on the best practices on advocacy, which was presented to you already in Leipzig, but in the meantime we're updating that with further best practices that arose as a result of this cooperation, and a second document that we will prepare now on the substance, on the state of play as regards free speech and media freedom in the member states where we developed project activities. By the end of the project, your work will have contributed more than 60 Rule 9 submissions to the work of the Committee of Ministers. This is an amazing result at a period in a year where otherwise the engagement of NGOs with the Committee of Ministers through Rule 9 plateaued for the first time. It proves that we need this kind of mobilization, we need this kind of support to your work, we need this small funding that we provided to concretely support your work on submitting Rule 9s. This is indispensable. We're very proud and thankful to you all for the results you achieved at national level through advocacy events. you might not consider it as important as we do, but for us, the national activity advocacy events you organized, bringing together actors, talking about implementation, acting as kind of cascade trainers. We have reached this point by now that we have trusted partners in all jurisdictions, being able to speak about implementation matters and concerns to other actors that we need involved. All this is your doing. Regarding, in 5 headlines, the most important messages and takeaways from these discussions we have had today. Several levels of success stories. To what extent have we been successful? Success depends, it is a matter of how we define success. And what can we claim to be a success seen against the environment in which that development was achieved? Of course, momentum plays a role. So when the time is right, the timing is right, it's very important that you were there to cooperate at national and international level, push reforms forward and achieve great things in substance, as we have seen in Moldova, in Lithuania, for example. But we cannot, our working environment is so difficult that we cannot only stay with the acknowledgement of the success in substance. So procedural successes, while they do not resolve the problem, we need to take a moment to tap ourselves on the shoulder and congratulate ourselves for the little success stories, the little breakthroughs we have had, even at procedural level, keeping a case open, which was bound to be closed, bringing attention on a case that was buried into the work of the Committee of Ministers for decades without attention, generating a greater response from the Committee of Ministers in the sense of a stronger wording or on bigger attention to the subject matter in times where everyone is struggling to catch the Committee of Ministers' attention. Those are very important results. What can we do better? A lot of things. We discussed about how we cannot understand why it is so difficult to just say that please don't use slaps to threaten people when you don't like their opinion. It does not take a lot. I think it was Zsuzsa who mentioned that it should not take a lot to agree to that change. It does not take a lot of resources. It is just a matter of political will that we are not there. The issue of training of all actors, we, despite the best of our efforts at NGO level, at institutional level, we still heard that a big part of all actors involved in this effort are still not knowledgeable of the situation, of the mechanism, and of the role they can play in supporting the mechanism. So nothing is earned there. Yes, we can be proud of what we achieved so far, but we cannot stop simply because there are so many more actors that we can reach out to. The judges, instrumental discussion about the judges. It is true that as per their role, as per their function, they are an audience that are unreachable to us. How do we work better with those entities that can reach out to them effectively so that we can, even if we cannot directly speak to them and convey our messages and our training, how do we create or we open the ways for those who can access them more easily to deliver that kind of training and bring them on board? Interest of society in general, I think it was a discussion about the Hungarian context, about how much society is interested in this degradation of the situation regarding free speech, democratic values. How is it possible, under what kind of influence does society not care, or what are those other items on the agenda that so much cover these very important matters that we cannot pass our messages through to the society. Of course, a very legalistic seemingly discussion to have, but not at all in essence, a very substantial discussion. How do we litigate? Where do we stand in terms of litigation at national level, in terms of approaching strategically the issue of building up our cases at national level with our mind at the internationalization of the problem, and then how do we litigate at international level? Do we take into account that once a case is brought before the court, we will need to also see this case through to its end, and we will need to support it not only up to the level of the rendering of the judgment, but up to the way of full implementation of the case. And of course, what covers all and sets the tone for the discussion. What kind of resources we have for this type of work? So the funding, the problem of funding, underfunding for our work, not just our work, the institution's work as well, the journalists' work, is something that arose, I think, through all of our panels. At the time where the space for financial support of our work is dire, it has never been as bad, I dare say, and it keeps shrinking. How do we convince everyone, the funding community, that this is a cause worthy of dedicating efforts and resources? And what strategies do we need to come up with, what coalitions, what kind of cooperation we need to develop towards achieving better funding? And I think some examples were mentioned. I think that such types of events are useful and a success if they create more answers than more questions than the answers they provided, and I think we have heard a lot of great expertise from all of you. We go away with things to think through, to further our thinking about and over, and of course. At this emotional moment for us at EAN, where we need to say farewell to our baby project on freedom of expression, which we held so dear to our hearts, it is only a pledge to you that we will keep finding ways to keep this forum together. It is very important that we created this pool of national experts that come together often, exchange about their work, their challenges, their setbacks, exchange on good practices, exchange their frustration, or we just find ourselves together in a safe environment to talk about our efforts in this field. Vincent has a few words to say exactly on the matter of how we will stay in contact until you will hear from us about further ways of continuing this project.
So I'm sorry, I'm keeping you a bit more. I will do this quick presentation, and then we'll just take a group picture before going, if you don't mind. So. In Leipzig, we had polled the participants about what would be the ways that we could ensure sustainability, how can we foster the exchanges among beneficiaries and participants. And one idea that we had was maybe we need to have a communication channel for all the partners in the project, but also extend this network in the long term to exchange information that we have on national level, developments, so that other that are experiencing similar difficulties and challenges can benefit from the experiences from other jurisdictions. So we came up with the idea of creating a LinkedIn group. This is a private group, meaning that only the members of the group can see the post and post within it. So it's a safe space for you to express, share resources within with the members of the group. And so how to join this group? So you have a little video here that basically explains how to join the group. So either you need to type in the research of LinkedIn the title of the group, or I invite you to scan. Scanning, you will need then to request to join the group, and we will be accepting you within the group. EIN is the only moderator of this group, the reason being that we want to make sure that the people that are within the group are people that share the same values, of course, and that there is no interferences, and once again, to guarantee that it's a safe place. I also invite you to, if you can play the video, please. To activate the notifications. Of course, you can manage your own social media the way you want, but I invite you to at least activate some notifications so that you're aware when we will be posting or when other people will be posting. We will try as EIN to post maybe at least once a month, as part of these posts, the resources that you shared ahead of the conference while registering for the conference will be shared throughout the next weeks and months on the LinkedIn group. I also invite you to share this group with your co-workers, colleagues, partners at national level, and I invite you to take with you one of the folders in which there were the agenda, because on the back of the folder you will find also the QR code to join the group. Thank you. And so now if we can just all go here in front for a family picture, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again. Thanks to our funders, to Swedish Postcode Lottery, the Socrates Foundation, the Free Thought Foundation for the great support, the Sigrid Housing Trust that provided the possibility to us to sub-grant, to support your work with small sub-grants. Nothing would have been able without them, but nothing would have been able for us, for the whole outcome of this project, without the support that I have had within my magnificent, small but miracle working team. Vincent Lefebvre, our communications wizard, but our miracle child otherwise, on supporting all initiatives. Ioana Iliescu, our law and advocacy officer, who is not with us because of some very happy future developments for her at personal level. Temporarily, she's not with us, but she has been the heart and soul of this project. As you know, she is behind the provision of legal advice to you all, and I cannot thank her enough for that. Agnes Cicarone, who is no longer with us, the finances and program manager who coordinated the first phases of this project, and of course Cyril Monplot, who very recently replaced Agnes in that position and already contributes to the continuation of the success of this role. Thank you very, very much. Safe travels back home, and let's keep in touch, dear colleagues. All the best.